Good morning, Dan and Amy. And Amy, like big Irish or Italian immigrant families, right? You know that there's always one son who goes to the priesthood. That used to be the way, and that's the favorite son,
Oh, yes.
right? So we're pleased to be joined. What I assume was the great Justice Antonin Scalia's favorite child, Father Paul Scalia, who's written a book.
I'd like to assume that too.
I figured you might. His new book, That Nothing May Be Lost, Reflections on Catholic Doctrine and Devotion. Father Scalia, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Good to be with you. Good morning to you.
Good morning. And I've gotten through about half your book, and I'm really enjoying it, all the essays from leading Catholic thinkers around the country, in addition to your words. But before we get to the book, I just have to go back to the wonderful eulogy you delivered for your father, and for those who missed it, recounting the story of Justice Scalia in line for confession when he realized who his confessor would be.
That's right. Just like any other Catholic, he's would be attentive to who's the priest going to be behind the screen. And when he found out that it was going to be me, he exited the confessional line pretty quickly.
Did he really?
And scolded me afterwards for for doing my job. And joking around, he scolded me that I was going to be the cause of his demise.
Right, you're supposed to apprise him of your schedule, right?
Exactly.
But you composed yourself. I mean, there was such a beautiful
what
mass
I love about
tribute.
My dad, he was just in line for Saturday afternoon confessions. It's not like there's a special line for Supreme Court justices. But anyway, I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, no, but it was a beautiful mass and tribute and a heartfelt homily from you that it will be remembered for ages to come. How difficult was it putting it together, or did it come naturally?
Well, I can't say it came naturally, but there were so many people praying for the family and for my father that entire moment, that entire mass was really very blessed, and I just felt a great deal of grace and divine assistance in that whole thing, and my family did as well. And so I don't think there is a human way of explaining how it could be so peaceful in such a difficult time.
Well, I thought the one of the important aspects of the Mass also was just communicating to a nation that was watching the importance of faith in your father's life. That's
right, and family, and
family.
It was for a couple of days. I think in a lot of major news sources, the focus was jerked away from politics and towards really just faith and family, and that was a great blessing. And we really had not initially intended to have the funeral mass on such a grand scale, but the circumstances being what they were, it ended up being a blessing. I mean, for us, and I think for many in the nation, be able to see faith integrated into the life of the nation in such a public way.
And there's been a couple of additional nice moments since your father's passing, including your mom being recognized by the president during his State of the Union address.
Yes, he's been very, very gracious to her, and she deserves it. She's a great woman.
Have you spoken to any other Supreme Court justices?
Well, I mean, not too much since. Well, I guess in the fall there were some ceremonies at the court to remember my father, and they're all just so very gracious, and they're all really, we're fond of him and we're friends with him. Even those who disagreed with him most vehemently, they all felt the loss, and were so incredibly gracious and kind to my mom and to the entire family.
They're not forcing you to go to the opera with Ruth Bader Ginsburg to replace your dad, are they?
Well, I would look funny in all the opera get-up.
Yeah, right.
I'm going to beg out of that one.
And have you? I don't know that you weigh in on matters political, but just because this is so personal, do you have a perspective on the a confirmation of now Justice Gorsuch to follow your father?
No, I don't really, and it wouldn't really be proper for. If I did, it wouldn't be proper for me to comment on that.
Fair enough.
He really has to, be his own justice.
Okay. I want to get to the book again. That Nothing May Be Lost: Reflections on Catholic Doctrine and Devotion, which includes introductions, as I mentioned, essays by people we've had on this show, great Catholic scholars like Helen Alvare and Dan Matson, Gloria Purvis, among others. The impetus to write the book is always interesting to me.
I was joking with some people last night that I just said I'm in it for the money. That's it.
There you go. Thank you. That's so honest. Appreciate it.
It was a small church group, and I did it. I said that just for effect. And no, this is a collection of things I've written over the years, and it seemed a good idea to gather them together, to bring some other voices into the reflection on these things, and to put it out there to see that it can be some benefit for people, and help people in their growth in the life of faith and coming closer to Christ and His Church. And I'm very pleased with the way it's come together and the reception it's had.
What was your journey in becoming a Catholic priest? I mean, did you grow up thinking that you wanted to do that, or what was what was it that you realized that that's what you wanted to pursue?
Well, you all started the lead-in here. You started about how in an Italian-Irish family, there's got to be one who becomes a priest, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And it's true that just growing up, it was sort of in the atmosphere, in my mind. But then after I received the sacrament of confirmation, I remember. In fact, I was just with my dad at that time, and we were driving home, and there was just a clear sense of becoming a priest, and it took me a while to say yes to that, but that was the beginning of it, and that's when I really started thinking about it and thinking about myself as a priest, and I've been blessed with not really looking back since I made that decision right after college, or actually in my last year of college.
Thinking about Catholicism in the modern context, one of the most popular and beloved figures in the world, regardless of religious affiliation, is Pope Francis. But part of that popularity, it seems to me, comes from a press corps, at least in this country, essentially covering Pope Francis from this perspective. He's not really Catholic. They want to cover him when he talks about or seems to enter into labor economics or environmental policy, but not so much when it comes to the catechism. And it seems to me one of the thrusts of your book is to suggest that Catholicism is not antiquated. The Church's teaching is not restrictive. It is not draconian in tone or nature, and it is misportrayed as such often.
That's exactly right, and right. The press doesn't really report on when Pope Francis talks about the devil, for example.
No,
they don't. That doesn't fit in with their narrative. But yeah, you put your finger on it. One of my favorite authors, G.K. Chesterton, quipped that the church is small from the outside and big on the inside. In other words, it looks restrictive from the outside. It looks, as you put it, draconian. But entering into it, as so many converts have experienced, there's a great freedom in there. What Scripture calls the freedom of the children of God. And that's precisely what I hope comes through in these pages is that living the truths or striving to live the truths of the Catholic faith do bring us a great freedom and broaden our lives rather than restrict them.
And you do preach abstinence, don't you?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
And practice
it.
Yeah,
well, yes, I do.
Yes.
Well,
yes, absolutely.
this is another area. This is. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
That's a great. I was going to say that area, that sphere of human sexuality. I think a lot of people have been deceived in thinking, well, gosh, being able to do whatever I want means greater freedom. And unfortunately, what they've discovered is it means greater harm and hurt, and it means weaker families. And the age-old teaching on human sexuality, which is not exclusively Catholic, but used to be everybody's teaching, that is what makes for actually greater freedom, because there's more stability in life. There fewer wounded hearts and wounded bodies. And so that's a great area that shows how adhering to a truth brings us greater freedom. And every athlete and every great musician knows this, or any great artist knows this. You have to restrict yourself in a certain way in order to broaden your expertise. Tom Brady has to restrict himself in many ways in order to become an incredible quarterback. I realize this is airing in Chicago. Maybe I shouldn't talk about Tom Brady.
Oh, no, we like Tom Brady.
uh,
Don't worry,
Yeah,
Father. Nothing wrong with that topic.
the Bears franchise has been suspended from the NFL.
We don't even know who our quarterback is. So.
And I think that the same applies to life of faith. Yes, there is a restriction of things, but what it leads us to is a greater freedom.
Well, this is such an important point, because this kind of whole, everybody lives their truth, do whatever you want, everything's morally equivalent. And the idea that because something is legal, it is therefore a good. The idea that being libertine is being more free rather than actually being enslaved by your appetites. And I think, part of what I don't hear enough from the church, at least in Chicago, at least from Cardinal Supich, is the idea of that discipline that you're talking about, and this idea of libertinism being a mode of self-enslavement rather than expanding your freedom.
Exactly right. Exactly right. And that's throughout Scripture. That the more we give into our passions, our fallen human nature, the more enslaved we become to them. And history is just a narrative of people trying to prove the opposite, and
Right.
it doesn't work. And we priests see this, and we see this in the confessional. We see this when people come to us for advice. We see how people have repeatedly tried to go in a different direction, and it always leads to great sadness, and as you put it, to slavery.
One other,
Passion.
I think, since you raised G.K. Chesterton, who's one of my favorites as well, one of his observations that I really like, because it goes to this canard that is popular in the secular culture, that faith and reason are exclusive, or mutually exclusive. And Chesterton wrote that he who has given into unreason is ready for unkindness, that faith and reason are complementary. And if you're unreasonable, then you're given into unkindness towards your fellow man.
And that's a very important point, because people think that truth is what is hostile. But in fact, it's when we deny truth and rational discussion. Once that's gone, then the only thing we have to resort to is brute force. What enables us to live in common with others is the ability to engage in rational discourse. But if there is no truth, then we can't have rational discourse, and then suddenly it just becomes a matter of the strongest one wins. And this is why Pope Benedict, Cardinal Ratzinger at the time, he referred to the dictatorship of relativism. Relativism is a great promise. Everybody can have his own truth. But what it comes down to is no one is allowed to have any truth, and so and then you need somebody to enforce that, and that leads to the unkindness. So that's one of Chesterton's great observations. Unreason leads to unkindness.
Well, for more rational discourse and truth, pick up Father Paul Scalia's book, That Nothing May Be Lost, Reflections on Catholic Doctrine and Devotion. Father Scalia, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it. Good luck with the book.
Great to be with you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.